Hey guys, this is Tristain. Today we're gonna take a look at a tool that I designed to help you guys out in designing your build orders and actually especially optimizing your build order designs in a very quick fashion. So a couple weeks ago, I posted a poll on Reddit asking what source do you use the most to pick your build orders for Starcraft II. I was thinking about just making a first video to discuss the advantages and the pros and cons actually of using any given build order source, or what were the inconvenience and the advantages for each source. But it turned out that most of you like to design your build orders by yourself the most. So I thought I was going to just give you guys a tool to accelerate the optimization process when it comes to designing your own build orders, and maybe that having this tool will encourage you in keep doing that actually, and keep designing your own build orders, because I think that's a really fun part of StarCraft II. That's where the creativity can express itself within the game, and that's definitely a big part of it, and I think that's one of the reasons why people play it. So having tools to help you figure out how you're going to get things done with the ideas you've got, I think that should help. So here we go. This is going to be the tool. It's called a Convergent point calculator. Now this may seem like a pretty big sophisticated word. Don't be scared. We're going to explain what that means and how that's going to be useful to us. Yeah, but before we get into that, I think it's going to be useful that I go back with you to a couple of macro rules and macro observations, so that we really are on the same page and get what I mean when I talk about convergent point. I can't just throw the definition at you. It's going to be, I don't think that's going to be very efficient. So we're going to start with the basics, and we're going to build from that point on, so that we can really get there and understand together what that means. Okay, so you've pretty much all heard about that idea that in StarCraft, money should be spent as it comes into your bank at all time, up until you are maxed out. When a player is able to spend his money very quickly as it comes into his bank, so his money will never get above the, say, 500, 600 mark up until max out, we're gonna say that this player has got a very high spending efficiency. So that's one of the first rules. Second rule that we hear now and then will be that a production building should be producing units at all time. Otherwise, it's not worth its investment. A player who always has got buildings producing units has a very high production efficiency. That's how we're gonna label that, so that we can understand each other a bit better later on. So yeah. Also, there are going to be some other macro rules that you've heard of, obviously, like never be supply blocked and keep making workers. Obviously, that's all good, but for the purpose of this video, we're not going to insist on these in particular. Now we're going to go into a bit more of observations and definitions about macro and build order designing. Money can be invested either in economy, technology, or army production. Now, I didn't invent these concepts. If we go into any StarCraft II replay and we just pop up the spending tab, we're going to see exactly this: economy, technology, and army. These are the three spending possibilities within the game, and that's how Blizzard made a categorization. Yep, I think that's the proper word. So, moving forward. When a build order at some point in time invests a significant portion of its available income in economy or technology, we're going to call it a macro stage. That's the way I label it. I'm going to label a phase in a build where you invest a lot of money in economy or technology. That's expansions, production buildings, technology buildings like eBays, armories, forge, or whatever. So that's all economy and technology spendings. And if you invest a lot in economy and technology spendings, you're in a macro stage of a build. Number 5, when a build at some point in time invests all or almost all of its income in army production, we call that an all-in stage. So when you're basically spending all of your money on just producing units, especially army units, but just units in general, you are in what I call an all-in stage. You have no money left over to invest in things like expansions and tech. You're in an all-in phase or an all-in stage of a build order. So these definitions are going to be important moving forward to really understand each other. Okay, number 6, production infrastructure at any given time within a build should allow the player to spend in army production the money he has not invested or plans to invest either in economy or technology. Such a production infrastructure is called a convergent point. So that's starting to be a bit more complex here. So we're saying that, okay, we can spend money either in economy, technology, and army. And we've also said that we want to spend pretty much all of our money at all point in time in StarCraft. So once I've invested the money I wanted to invest in economy and technology, there's going to be an amount of money left over. And that amount of money, I should be able to spend it all with my production buildings in army units. So in order to do so, I'm going to need a certain amount of production buildings. If I have just the right amount of production buildings, I should be able to spend all of my money without having to overqueue my production buildings. When you've got this just right amount of production buildings to spend all the leftover money, then you've got what we call a convergent point. Now, convergent point is not a concept I invented. There is this website called Terrancraft that's been founded by a player called Maxilicious. He's a Team Liquid author. He first published an article about a convergent point that was in 2013, I believe. And he's also published an updated article about this idea just in 2016, so just last year. And yeah, he just explains pretty much everything I've just said in his own words. And he also goes on to show you some very typical sorry, he's just going to show you some typical convergent point used by pro players. And now convergent point is only going to exist for a certain economy. So that's why on his website you're going to find something like 2 bases unsaturated. Then for 2 bases unsaturated Terran, most of the time what people are going to find is 1 barracks, 1 factory, 1 starport, and 2 main composition building, or whatever composition building you're choosing to do. So these are the staple convergent points here. That's what you're going to find in pro replays all the time. And Maxilicious details and gives examples about replays and what you can and cannot do with the production buildings amounts. Now, something that he points out himself is that in order to use these convergent point efficiently, you're going to have to make certain units out of these buildings. You won't be allowed to make any kind of composition out of these production buildings. And there's a very important reason for that, and it's called mineral cost and gas cost, or just resource cost per minute. Now, to explain this, we're going to hop into my program. So let's say you've got a barrack that's producing 1 Marine at a time, constantly. That Marine production of 1 Marine per cycle will cost you 166 minerals per minute. Now, if you decide to switch from that unit type being produced out of this building. Let's say you're not going to make marines now, you're going to make ghosts instead. Let's keep that here. That one ghost per cycle is going to cost you 413 minerals per minute. So that's actually more than double the amount that will cost you a marine production. So that's why you can't just say, oh, well, if I'm a Terran player and I'm on the 2-base economy, then all I need is one factory, one starport, and 3 barracks. And that's it. No matter what the composition I'm producing, I can just have that amount of production buildings, and I'll be just fine. I'll be able to produce whatever I want out of them, and my economy will be perfectly adapted. No, that's not the way it's going to work. It's just your convergent point will work if you are making the units, the units that were intended to be produced out of these buildings. So that's the only flaw I could think of when reading Max Delicious' article. I was thinking, okay, so there are the staple builds, orders, designing, the staple conversion points that people use. Now the thing is, what if someone wants to make a very crazy unit composition? Like he wants to build, I don't know, Thors and Banshees and Ghosts and Marines, and he just wants to know if that's something doable. Can I actually produce Thors and Banshees and Marines of a 3-base economy with that amount of building? Is that going to work? That's the kind of question that you're not going to be able to answer through analyzing pro replays. You're not just going to be able to go and find that cure or innovation replay and say, okay, so he uses these buildings and I should use these buildings to do this type of unit composition. We've just demonstrated why that is not going to be possible, because different units will make different production buildings cost more or less of your income per minute, depending on the unit comp that you're making, basically. So that's where the program I designed, and actually I didn't invent this idea for a program. I know someone already did that and posted something on Team Liquid about it. The problem is it's never been updated to Legacy of the Void, so I thought I'd do my own version of it. But this program is going to allow you to answer these questions. What amount of production buildings am I going to have to make if I want this or that unit comp? Yes. So let's try to use it, and let's just try to think of some crazy comp we would like to come up with. So wait, this was wrong, what I did just here. So it's going to be very important when using this graph to not do what I just did. You don't want to touch any of these cells. Just don't touch them. Don't play with them. These are things that are automatically calculated for you. So we don't work with these. What we're going to input in this column. That's why I put a nice input cell right here, just to remind you that it should all happen here. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, okay, let's say I want to make Thors, Marines, and Banshees. That's what we were talking about. It's kind of a crazy comp. And we want to know if we're going to be allowed to do such a comp, to produce such a comp of, let's say, 2.5 base economy. We're going to have 32 workers mining. So we're going to input that number here. But we're going to have 3 CCs. Let's pretend we've got 3 CCs. So we've got that amount of mules. We've got 3 mules to work with. And we're going to have 12 workers on gas. That's pretty much for refineries saturated. So we can already see that this is our income at this point in time. With that amount of SCVs, we're going to have 2,360 mineral income per minute and 660 gas income per minute with these amounts of SCVs. Now we're going to do the guesswork. We're going to start experimenting outside of a game. And we're going to see what the program tells us we're allowed and not allowed to do with this economy. Now, we're still on 2 bases, so we're going to still be making SCVs. So let's make the 2 SCVs right here. So that's 2 SCVs per cycle. That means I'm going to be constantly producing 2 SCVs from my 2 CCs at all point in time. We're supposing that there's not going to be any gap in our production. That's the point of the program. We're supposing there's no gaps. Okay, so now we're going to make, let's say we're going to have 2 barracks with 2 reactors, so that's going to be 4 Marines per cycle. That's already quite a decent amount of minerals invested, 666 mineral per minute. And we're going to add the Thors. So let's say we want to make 1 Thor per cycle, and then we want to make 1 Banshee per cycle. So here's the Banshee. Yep. Okay, so how much amount are we going to be spending per minute? We're going to be spending 2,243 minerals per minute. That's assuming that our macro is perfect. That's assuming that there's not going to be any gap in our production cycles in our production tab. Now, nobody's perfect, and typically we're going to have some gaps, but that's something we're going to discuss a bit further in the later stages of this video. So that's going to be our spending potential with these buildings, and that's our income. And automatically we see that we've got 116 minerals left over per minute. That means if you have a perfect production with these units that you input here and the buildings that they imply, then you're going to have 116 minerals left over per minute that you'll be able to use for whatever you want. Now, it's very important that we notice that in this program, I added a little cell here called add supply cost, yes, 1 or no, 0. So supplies in StarCraft, they work a bit like a tax when you buy something new. If you produce a unit for the first time, let's say you produce a Marine that goes from 38 to 39 supplies, that makes you go from 38 to 39 supplies. Then you've bought a new unit and you have to pay for the supply cost of this unit. Now, supply cost works a bit like this. 1 supply depot costs 100 supply, and for niches, 8 supplies. So 8 supply divided by 8 is 12.5 minerals. That means that 1 supply, 1 fresh new supply within the game called StarCraft costs 12.5 minerals. So it's like, it works a bit like a tax, right? You pay for 1 Marine that costs 50 minerals, but you also have to pay for 1 supply that comes with this Marine. So you just have to add the tax, and you know that a Marine, a fresh new Marine actually costs 62.5 minerals. And that's the actual cost. I mean, that's really the cost of a Marine. If you're going to tell me that the Marine costs 50 minerals, I'm going to say yes and no, because you have to include the supplies in there. So I designed a program to allow you to include the supply cost. If you don't want to include that supply cost, then all you have to do is input a 0 in here. But I suggest that you leave it on, and we're going to leave that supply cell on for now. So we're just gonna put the 1 here. So that's actually really your spending potential with this unit comp. So we made a good guess, basically. We just see that, yeah, you can make 1 Banshee, 1 Thor, and 4 Marines per cycles with 2 SCVs of a 2 base economy with 3 mules, and you're gonna be just fine. Now, there is a nuance here, and it's a pretty important one. How much leftover should we have once we've spent all that money on our units? Now, this is going to be something that really touches the design of our build orders. Now, let me get back to this concept that we talked about a bit earlier. We said that money can be invested in either in economy, technology, or army production. That's what we said. Then when the build order at some point in time invests a significant portion of its available income in economy or technology, we call it macro stage. So if you're going to invest a lot of money in economy or technology, that means that you won't have as much money left over to invest in army units. That means, yeah, so how much leftover should I have left? Well, that's going to depend on what you're planning to do with your build order at a certain point in time. If you're going for a macro stage, as we called it, then you're gonna need more leftover here in that cell, so that you have more money to work with than the one that you've spent on your army units. That means that okay, say I did input 116 minerals in here. The result of my production cycles give me 116 minerals per minute left over. That means that after a perfect minute of perfect macro production, I'm gonna have 116 minerals more in my bank. So I'm not exactly going to be able to build an additional CC with that. I'm not going to be able to build, say, armories, e-base, or additional production buildings. I'm not going to be able to spend any money in there, or almost none. I mean, 160 minerals, that's basically one supply depot, and that's about it. Now, I don't want to confuse you guys because I just said supply depot, but remember that if that cell has a 1 input in there, then this amount accounts for the supply depot's production cycles. That means you don't have to worry about producing supply depots with the leftovers, because it's already included in here. That's just what I wanted to insist on. Okay, now, yeah, if I'm going to have only 116 minerals left, I'm not exactly sure I'm going to call it a macro stage. I'm not exactly sure I'm going to have the money I need to expand my base to make these additional CCs and such. Now, I've already said that. Now, in order to illustrate this principle, I think it's going to be wise that we take a look at a pro replay, and that's what we're going to do right now. We're going to take a look at a replay of a game that was played by Innovation against Classic in December. So in this game, Innovation just goes for a very typical 1-1-1, one rise expand into 1-1-1. But he's going to lose a lot of SCVs to Classic's aggression. We're going to have to compose with that, but it's going to be just all right. I'll show you. So yeah, he's getting his starport, he's getting Widowmine, and he has got to face this Pylon Rush, and he's going to lose quite a lot of SCVs. We can see here already 5 SCVs. And oh, he gets that Oracle. That's very nice for him. But still, he lost quite a few SCVs at this point in time. 8 SCVs. That hurts a lot. But so yeah, right now he's really doing his best to stay alive against his aggression. He almost lost his barracks, but he did an okay job, I guess, against Classic. I mean that's Innovation. Let's be serious. This is some awesome playing, and yeah, he goes for this production setup. Okay, and that's pretty much Innovation's 2-base convergent point. That's the setup he goes for and he plans to use in order to spend the money he gets off of a two-base economy. Now, we are 6 minutes 21 into the game, and at this point in time, he's only got 13 SCVs mining in his main and 9 in his natural. So he doesn't have a full 2-base economy yet. He just can't constantly produce units out of these production facilities yet, because he just doesn't have the money for it. I don't think so. Well, actually, you can see he's still got some money in there, but yeah, he doesn't have the income yet. See, out of these, he just can't make anything out of them because he just doesn't have the SCVs yet. But eventually, he will saturate his natural. It's gonna take quite a while because he still has got to deal with all of this harass, and yeah, he loses 2 more SCVs. Then he's got to fill these refineries, and eventually, bam, yeah, pretty much 2, 12, 13, 14. Yeah, now he's pretty much on a 2-base economy. He doesn't have exactly a 2-base economy now. You see, he's already mined out some of his mineral fields here, so he doesn't have exactly a 2-base economy. But we're we're going to pretend that he is and that he didn't lose all of these workers. So just for the purpose of our example. So now he's on this economy, two-base economy, and that's what his production buildings are. Now I wrote down these this production setup right here, and we're gonna calculate how much spending potential that gives him. So first of all, again, we're going to input the economy he's got. He's on pretty much 32 SCVs. As we said, he doesn't exactly have 32 SCVs, but we're going to pretend he does. And he's got 2 mules to work with. And yeah, he's got 12 workers on gas. Now that's his setup. He's got 2 CCs producing 2 SCVs at a time. He's got 1 racks on reactor producing 2 marines at a time, and 2 racks on tech labs for 2 marauders per cycle, and then 2 widow mines per cycle, and now and then he produces either liberator or medevac. So what we can see here is that, very surprisingly, we could say, he's actually, innovation's got pretty much too much production potential for his income. You see that this negative figure here of minus 521 just shows us that even on a perfect 2-base saturation, innovation just wouldn't even have the income he needs in order to have a perfect macro production of 2 SCVs, 2 marines, 2 marauders, and so on. So what does that tell us? At first, I was really surprised when I input these numbers. I thought to myself, okay, so that basically means he's got more spending potential than he's got money he can spend. So that goes on to contradict what we said at first, right? It goes on to contradict that a production building should be producing units at all time. Otherwise, it's not worth its investment. So innovation would have a very low production efficiency. That's kind of weird, don't you think? It's like saying, well, I've got more production than what I'm allowed to work with. So that means that he's not going to be producing units constantly from his production buildings. See, if we just decelerate this and we just click the play button, we're gonna notice that that production is filled with gaps everywhere. It's just, see, no SCVs being produced here, and yeah, now he's producing pretty much units. Yeah, still gaps here and there. That's not full production, and then that's not full production either. So yeah, there are production gaps, and he's not making SCVs all the time. At this point, he's pretty all in, and I think that's his plan. He just lost so many SCVs at this point in time. He's saying, now, if I'm gonna win this game, I'm gonna have to make something happen, and that's what he just did. He killed 2 probes with this drop, I think, and he's still going to harass the main base. He's gonna make something happen. So he's going all in. He hasn't put down a 3rd CC yet. He's just producing as many units as he can. He is all in. That's what I call an all-in stage at this point. He's just investing all the money he can. But the weird thing is he's even got more production potential than what he can work with from his income. So that goes a long way to show us, I think, that pro players tend to give themselves more production capacity, more production potential than what they can really spend from. So that's somehow what you could call a sort of cushion. Now, this is just a theory here I'm making. You guys maybe will have your own theories about this and come up with your own ideas about why this is what's happening. But when you've got more production than what you need to work with, you're kind of giving yourself a cushion. You're kind of giving yourself some freedom in terms of imperfect macro. Because in StarCraft, we tend to get caught with what happens out there on the map, and then we come back to our production and we fill the buildings. But meanwhile, there has been some gaps in our production. Our production was not perfect. Now, if you've got more production potential than what you can really spend, that means you're going to be able to spend all of your money still. So what that means is that basically you are allowed to sacrifice some production efficiency in order to make sure that you always have very high spending efficiency. If you've got more production buildings than your income will allow you to spend, that means at any point in time, it's going to be very, very easy to spend your money all the time. So that second rule that we've got here, production buildings should be producing units at all time. Let's say it's a good rule, but it's a relative rule. It's better to have more production than what you need in order to spend your money at all time. So I did check a few other replays to make sure that that was not an exception here, that this negative figure wasn't some, weird data that didn't show anything realistic about the game, that did not show anything that's a real trend in pro players. I did take a look at other innovation replays and also a Beyond replay and Maru replay, and I left the data right down here if you guys want to check it out. But what that made me conclude is that, yeah, it's okay. If you're going to design an all-in stage, a stage in your build order where you're investing all of your economy into making units, then it's okay to have a negative figure in the leftover cell. That means you're gonna basically be able to really spend all of your money. Now, maybe don't go for a minus 1,000, leftover. Here we see that we've got a minus 500, and that's pretty much okay for innovation. Yeah, now let's go on with the replay and proceed to the next stage of innovations build. So he's made units, and at some point he just stops making units in order to be able to make his other CC. That's quite an important remark, I think. When you're going to be playing an all-in phase of a build, the only way you're going to be able to transition out of it is by cutting some production. So yeah, that's what innovation does here. He just cuts some production in order to be able to squeeze in his third CC. Yeah, so he goes on and he adds these 2 barracks as he's going to take his third base. So he's going to go from a 2 base economy to a 3 base economy. Now again, it's not exactly going to be a 3 base economy because he's going to have depleted many of his minerals in his main. Now, yeah, what I believe from looking at this is that if his build order would have gone exactly the way he intended it to go, he would have had this third base much earlier, and so he would have had much more of a perfect 3 base saturation. He has to work with less because he lost all of these SCVs in the earlier phases of the game, and now he really is on his 3 base saturation with his 3 base production setup. So that's a whole new setup. We've got 3 Raxes on reactor, and actually on tech lab, and 2 Raxes on the reactor. We've got a starport on reactor pumping out medevacs and widow mines being pumped out of this reactor factory. So that's his 3 base economy setup at this point. We're gonna input the numbers in our program and see how that turns out. Also, we're going to consider a full 3 base saturation, although it's not the case here. Innovation is more working with a 2.5 saturation because this base is almost mined out. This is Legacy of the Void for you. Yeah, so yeah, let's input these numbers. So he's got 2 Raxes on reactor. We're just gonna refresh this at first. Yeah, right here. And we're gonna input the 3 base saturation. We're gonna pretend he's got 2 base saturation, a 3 base saturation, pardon. He's got 3 mules, he's got 18 SCVs on gas, and that's his 3-base macro setup. So we've got no more SCVs being produced. He's done with the SCVs. He's making 4 Marines at a time. He's making 3 Marauders, 2 Widow Mines, and 2 Liberators. Oops, that's 2 Liberators, yes. Now, wait, no, I didn't put too many Marauders in here. Yeah, and too many Widow Mines too. That's 2 Widow Mines, and yeah, 4 and 3 Marauders. Here it is. Okay, now that makes sense. So now we can see that at this point in time, his leftover from his spending potential is 398. So that's pretty much 400 minerals, positive 400 minerals. So we're gonna write this down here just for the purpose of making sure we remember that stuff. So we had pretty much negative 500 when he was on his 2-base all-in setup. And now he's on his 3-base macro setup, and what he's got left over is 400. Why is it a macro setup? Well, basically because, yeah, he's adding this new command center, and he's going to add this second eBay and armory, and he's going to also add, I believe, very soon, another starport. Yeah, there it is. So all of these buildings, additional buildings, they cost money. So he needs to have some money left over for these buildings. And that's why we see right here that his leftovers are something like 400 minerals per minute. That's the money he's going to use in order to make these economy and technology investments. So yeah, that gives you an idea of what you should expect in terms of leftovers if you're going to design your build orders. So in order to wrap all of this up, we're gonna take a look at this sheet I wrote. It's just a general build order designing framework. So just general ideas that you could use in order to design your own build orders from the things that we just said, considering the things that we said in this video. So when you're going to design your own build order, you may want to ask yourself first, okay, so what unit composition am I looking for? Yeah, that's going to be the basis of your build. What unit comp am I going to work with? That's usually a pretty easy part, because StarCraft is a lot about, hey, I think this unit is strong at this phase in the game, so I'm gonna design a build where I use this unit, or because I like this unit, I want to play with this unit, and that's perfect. I mean, that's great. That's what all the fun is about. Now, a second question you're going to have to ask yourself, I think, is what kind of timing am I looking for with that unit comp I chose? Am I looking for a 3-base timing, a 2-base timing? Answering this question determines at least one all-in stage. Okay, now this is a word I'm still using with caution, let's say, because sometimes people really like to go in a very macro and very linear approach to their build orders, just always having money to invest in upgrades and such, and eventually they'll just win the game because they will have better upgrades and such. But that still means that at some point in time, maybe at the 15-minute mark, you're planning to have some sort of timing. That means that you're just gonna have more army and with better upgrades than your opponent. And so you're still gonna have a timing of some sort, even if you go for that kind of approach. Except that your timing is gonna be very late. It's gonna be let's say 14 or 15 minutes timing, where you're gonna be very, very certain that you've just overwhelmed your opponent in terms of army value and upgrades. So what I suggest for you is to decide on a unit comp, decide on the timing that you want to work with for your build order, and start with this timing. Start with this all-in phase of your build for your design. So let's say I want to design a 2-base all-in stage. Then I will start with the design of this 2-base all-in. I will use my program to make sure that I know how many buildings of each type I'm going to need in order to furnish for this 2-base timing, so that I can really spend my money efficiently. I will decide on how much buildings I need at this point in time, and then I will fill in the blanks. I will add the 3 base macro stage, or the 3 base, just the 3 base setup I will need afterwards, and I will decide on an opening I'm going to use. So maybe for these stages, I'm going to use more of the staple convergent points that are available out there that the pro players use, or maybe I'm going to design them myself too. I mean, you're free to do that also. So now let's just keep in mind that, as we said, for when it comes to determining how much leftover we should have in this cell from the production cycles that we've determined, you have to bear in mind that, okay, if I'm going to design an all-in stage, a point in time where I'm not going to invest in additional infrastructure, then I may work in this zone. So I'm going to have maybe negative 300, negative 400 minerals of leftover. So that way I'm sure I can spend all of my money on units at all time and spend all of my bank. If I'm going to design a more macro oriented stage, then I'm more going to work towards this zone for my production cycles. So yeah, these are just general guidelines to how you can use this tool. I just wanted to give you guys an idea of how we can use it and what we should expect out of it, what we should expect to be able to do with that tool. Now, I don't design build orders myself from A to Z. I guess like most people, I just like to take stuff I've seen on replays or stuff that I've been given by someone and just fix stuff around it the way I like it. But then, even in those kinds of build order mini designing situations, like fixing build orders, I found out that this tool is very useful to me, because at all point I'm thinking, okay, well, maybe I could just add a second starport at this point in time rather than a second factory, but then I'll be producing liberators rather than siege tanks. But wait, am I going to have the economy to support that infrastructure and these production cycles? Well, this program allows me to answer these kinds of questions, and I find it really useful personally. I hope that you guys will find some purpose in that too. And yeah, that pretty much covers everything I had to say in this video. I will link the file, of course, below the video. I will probably put that in the Dropbox, and I will also add the link to the article by Maxilicious that explains the convergent points and give you the staples of production setups that pro players tend to use. I think that's very useful. I encourage you to read on with that, absolutely. And let me just take a look at my notes here to make sure I didn't forget anything. Yeah, I don't think I did. I think that covers it all. So I hope this is useful, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.